Joining me is ABC News Political Director Rick Klein. Rick, okay, we hear a lot about this this strike on Iran and their leader. What does this mean for the average American?
Well, the big question is how the Iranians view this. If they view it as an act of war, it could mean quite a bit because we could essentially be at war with Iran. There's going to be, I think, a lot of concern about potential reprisals, both for Americans living abroad, military installations, as well as civilians, and potential cyber attacks here. So we haven't heard anything specific in terms of threats to the homeland, but there is a concern that there will be reprisals, that the Iranians will view this as war. Taking out a top leader like this is an act of war, essentially. So I think it'll take a little time to shake out, but I think we could be headed toward a major conflict with a major power, even though it's one that will have lost a pretty high-profile leader.
Okay, so why do other world leaders or other world powers view this as a situation where the world just became more dangerous?
Well, I think some of it has to do with the fact that the United States walked away from a deal that was signed off on by other major leaders and the U.S. a couple of years ago to denuclearize Iran. A lot of folks thought that deal was working. Donald Trump thought it wasn't. He threw it out, and he unilaterally walked back on that. And that created, in the view of some world leaders, destabilization. And I think it's also created a situation where the U.S. is a bit more isolated than it would otherwise be here, because a lot of other world leaders can essentially say, told you so. This wouldn't have happened if you had just kept the Obama-era nuclear pact in place. You wouldn't have these escalating tensions with Iran. So it's because the United States and under President Trump decided to go on its own that you lead to a situation where you have a strike like this. Now, maybe this was exactly the right call at the right time. Maybe the Iranians, it's essentially calling a bluff, or maybe this is just the tinderbox and it starts an extended confrontation that could include military casualties.
Okay, so should President Trump have gotten permission from Congress before doing this military strike?
I mean, that is certainly the way the law is written, but it also has wiggle room for a president who is acting in self-defense or defense of the nation. Presidents Obama, Bush, Clinton, all of them extensively used the powers handed to them through other congressional acts to respond to immediate threats. And if you believe what the White House and the administration is saying, which we should always inject some skepticism there given other issues they've had with the truth, but if you believe it, then this was in response to an immediate threat that would have cost American lives. And yes, Congress will complain, and particularly Democrats, about not being notified, some Republicans as well, but generally the courts have given some pretty large leeway to a president responding in a situation like that.
All right, this comes at a really interesting time when President Trump is looking at those articles of impeachment. Are the two connected, or does one have anything to do with the other? What's happening with this situation as it deals with impeachment?
Yeah, there's no sign of any being connected, although people are making lots of wag the dog references without real information connected to it. We know that the impeachment articles are hung up. They have not been transmitted by the House. Speaker Pelosi is still waiting on assurances that the Senate's going to engage in a fair trial before doing so. But it's undeniable that we now have a president potentially heading to war at the same time he faces an impeachment trial, at the same time he faces a re-election race this year.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. ABC News Political Director Rick Klein. You have a good day.
Thank you.